Hey there, my friend. It's Tricia Carr. Real quick before we head into this episode, I just want to make sure that you know about Modern Mystic Life, a subscription service for spiritual mentoring and education. The monthly subscription is only $11.11 per month. We have regular support and inspiration delivered with the utmost ease right into your text messenger 2 to 4 times per week. You can use your mobile device or your desktop messenger to access the lessons and meditations, a monthly MP3 download of a produced meditation, at least once per month live meditation led by me. There is no account login, and we have a monthly live class workshop. These are usually $35 for non-subscribers, so it is quite a deal. And the community is amazing. This is a way for you to support the Charmed Life podcast and also a way for us to be able to work more closely together. So do check out how you can subscribe in the show notes. I hope to see you there. Hello and welcome to the Charmed Life podcast. This podcast is all about magic, metaphysics, mysticism, and the unconditional love of the universe. And I am your host. My name is Tricia Carr. I have a very inspiring and hopeful episode for you today, a conscious conversation with Joyce Anastasia. Welcome to this episode once again, and I hope that you are heartened by everything that we talk about in this conscious conversation. Now, before we head into this conversation, I want to invite you to please share this with someone. I think that there really are a lot of people who could appreciate and feel comforted by this conversation of this episode, but also, to share the light of community, of spiritual community through this podcast if you feel guided. I would love for you also to leave a review of the podcast. All you do is go to your app and scroll down, and you will find a way to leave some stars, leave a few words, and that would just really be so wonderful. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate seeing those come in. So those are my invitations for you. Also a reminder that I do have a YouTube channel, youtube.com/Tricia Carr, and Instagram, and that's Instagram at Tricia Carr Charm. Sorry, at Tricia Carr Charm. I forgot how handles work on Instagram. Oh, goodness. Well, starting off with a little levity as we move into some topics that with my guest, I am just so excited for you to hear this conversation. So let me tell you about Joyce Anastasia. Joyce is a transformational leadership consultant, a peace ambassador of social healing, and a top trusted intuitive advisor. With advanced degrees and training and extensive hands-on experiences in psychology, consciousness, psi research, and innovative business practices, governance, and global ways of leading, healing, and being in the world, Joyce evokes the best in people. Joyce encourages power with collaborations, power with as opposed to power over. She also encourages emotional intelligence and ethically responsible decision-making from the personal to global. As a confidant, she bridges the seen and unseen realms. Joyce builds relational trust with a customized blend of critical thinking and intuitive insights, together discerning the most optimal pathways for the greatest outcome. Like I said, I'm so glad to hear that there is someone who is bridging the seen and unseen worlds with intuitive insight and emotional intelligence. And so I hope that you feel that encouragement as well in this conversation with my guest, Joyce Anastasia, and I will chat with you on the other side. Joyce, I am so excited to learn all about your fascinating work. I really have been anticipating having this conversation. So thank you so much for coming on. And can you please get us into your journey? I'm fascinated what your journey must be to bring you to the work that you do. And I want to hear all about the work. So wherever you want to start, I'm very interested.
Oh my goodness. I want to let you know that I really appreciate the previous podcasts that you've done. I
Oh,
listened to quite a few of them. And
really? Thank you.
oh, yeah, absolutely. And many of them, of course, intersect, which
Mm,
I think is very interesting. Um, One of the intersections was with the last woman you spoke with. She spoke about how her journey with Lyme pummeled her into many, many changes and
yeah.
to do the work she does. Well, I didn't have Lyme, but I had several near-death experiences in addition
Wow.
to when I was very young, I felt like my life had many turning points that brought me closer and closer to both spirituality and work with people in the way that was transformative.
Mm,
So, growing up, I was one of five kids, and I knew that I had a gift that I thought others had, but it was exaggerated. This
mm,
ability, the psychic abilities, the use of intuition in the world. And it wasn't really very accepted. And even today, I think that kids are suppressed a little bit around their what people refer to as imagination. Well, maybe it's not imagination.
mm-hmm.
Maybe it's beyond that.
Yeah.
Maybe it's being visited by supportive spirits or angelic beings or guides that are coming to us in unseen forms.
Yeah.
So I would say that that was the beginning of my journey when I was very, very young. And it brought me to number one, want to study parapsychology. Number two, if I couldn't study parapsychology because it was co opted by the military, not that the military is all bad,
No, right.
I don't mean it that way, but that I didn't want my gifts to be used in a way that I didn't know where it was going.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And sometimes you have to forfeit that when you are in the military or in
Mm-hmm.
organizations that are much broader.
Yes.
Then the third thing was I knew that I wanted to work with people in a way where it wasn't just focused on disease. I
Mm-hmm.
wanted it to be focused on growth and expansion and creativity of who we are. So I ended up studying to the degree level art and psychology.
Mm.
But
Perfect.
my greatest enjoyment of that was actually working with people.
Yeah.
So I started working with people from the time I would say 10 years old until
Oh.
now, and continue to. And I feel almost as if I was asked to come back to this planet, this beautiful Mother Earth, our Mother Earth, to actually serve in that capacity to help people to grow and to experience in this life things I might have experienced in past lives, and to hone it, to be
Mm-hmm.
very discerning about what I choose to lead in a different way.
Mm. That's beautiful. When you were 10 years old, how were you working with people? Was it with your intuitive psychic abilities?
Yes, in a way that was not official, but
Mm-hmm.
people would come to me if they had, especially if they had emotional sadness
Mm-hmm.
or felt like they didn't belong or were injured in some way.
Mm-hmm.
And especially when I was diagnosed with scoliosis and I had to wear a back brace,
Mm.
it even furthered that effort to work with people who might not have had a voice or might not have had anyone to speak to or even knew their connection with source.
Mm-hmm.
And that was very foundational for me, very
Mm.
foundational. And it wasn't easy either,
I'm sure.
having to wear a back brace for
Yeah.
7 years
Oh, that's
uh,
so long.
through junior high and high school. But it really solidified the work that I do now, which
Mm.
is transformational leadership consulting and bridging between the seen and unseen realms.
Oh, there's so much I want to ask you. How, before we move on, away from your childhood, even though I want to get into exactly how you do that bridging, how how was it for you? How was your family open to it, supportive, afraid? How did they take your abilities?
I would say overall, they were dismissive of it.
Mm.
They
Mm-hmm.
weren't abrasive about it, but they were dismissive. And teachers in particular were, I would say, abrasive around it.
Mm.
And I'll
Okay.
just give you an example. When I was very young, about 5 years old, I was at the playground and I saw this little boy playing on the uneven parallel bars. And I had a vision, not a very pleasant one, that he was being careless about the way he was playing on it. He wasn't paying attention to his body and where his positioning was. And in my vision, he fell off, hit his head, and actually passed away.
Oh gosh.
And so I went up to him and told him that, please be careful. I don't want you to get hurt. And he thought, this is crazy. He just had this funny look on his face. And the playground teacher came up to me and she said, don't you ever say that to anyone.
Mm.
And about 2 weeks later, the very same child went on the uneven parallel bars and actually passed, actually died from
Oh.
that very image. And so the teacher, if you can imagine me witnessing this as a child and feeling just overwhelmed with emotion of not knowing what to do
Right.
because I saw it, I tried to do something about it. It didn't work. And this boy died. And the teachers, on top of that, the teacher in the playground started screaming at me to stay away from the children, never talk to them like that again. And it was very challenging
Oh
because I
gosh.
knew in my heart, in my little girl heart, that it was a gift, but I felt like how am I going to navigate this? How am I
Mm-hmm.
going to live with this, with these messages that might come through that might not be what people want to hear, or even getting blamed
Yeah.
for things that might happen that I foresee. And I don't foresee everything.
Sure.
No one can because
Yeah.
we all have free will. But that's how it began. And I literally had to pray and communicate with those from the unseen realms to feel supported.
And we will be right back. Hello, my friend. I have something to share with you. Introducing Easy Intuition and Meditation Coaching, a 2.5-month live and interactive spiritual coaching and personal growth program. I created this program because I truly believe it will change lives. I do not speak this lightly. I have personal evidence that this training and coaching is a life changer. My life was miserable. I moved through the pain and the challenge by kindling a relationship with my intuition. This foundation is meditation, which for me quickly led to compassionate self-inquiry, to know my energy, and to heal my repressed emotions and traumas. And this was all brightened with the tools of divination. If meditation can break generations of trauma and suffering, as it did in my life, I know it can change anyone's life. I had guides, teachers, and coaches to help to light the path for me. In our 2.5-month program, you will receive education, meditations, and live group coaching sessions. You will be handed the keys to your own kingdom of heaven, and you will probably make new lifelong friends. It is perfect for all levels of spiritual development and meditation practice. This program starts November 1st, and you do not want to miss it. Thanks for tuning into your intuition. I love you, whoever you are.
And now back to the show.
Wow, what a really just tremendous burden for a little child. And there's so much fear, and the fear turns into superstition, that's what I would call the second, after the unfortunate passing of the young boy, which, obviously his higher self, that was going to happen that way. I don't think there's any accidents for something as definitive as births or deaths. There's no real accidents. It's just from our perspective.
Yes.
But I would say that teacher who yelled at you and blamed you, that was a kind of superstition where her fear had to turn into something, really outrageously mythological, that somehow a little child could cause a death. And that still is pervasive. And I'm really excited that you're doing the kind of work that you do. Again, I don't totally know what it is, so I'm about to find out. But is that a part of it? Have you been fighting fear and superstition of the unseen realms, as you're saying? Is that something obviously it's something we're all dealing with, or is that, it feels like you're a warrior about it?
My little niece just called me an angelic warrior.
Yes.
Like 2 days ago.
Amen.
It's so funny that you would use that expression.
Well, that's, how that is, why it's so funny.
Oh, yes. Yes. Synchronicity all the time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I can't agree more, Tricia, I can't agree more that in our time right now, on a big scale, this is one of the hardest times of our planet. I mean, there have been times in our planet that it's been really challenging. Imagine having a history of understanding of the Middle Ages and how everyone sees the Middle Ages as barbaric and this and that. But during the Middle Ages, too, there were beautiful things that happened. Mm-hmm. There were many mystical things that happened during the Middle Ages, just like there are right now. Yeah. And for me, if I were to condense it into 2 words, or 3 words, let me say, it would be fear imposing love instead of love overriding fear. Yeah. Because fear it's great to understand what fear is. We have natural fears. It helps us to take action when we need to. If there's a fire in our house, it helps us to run out the door as fast as we possibly can, maybe faster than we've ever run in our lives. But fear has become endemic in our society, so much so that we can't even have a normal day without I know so many people who have to take things, like ingest things, to calm themselves down. This is not healthy for human beings. And this is happening on a regular basis in our leaders, in our families, in our communities, and especially with COVID. So it's been an overriding energetic. So what I have tried to do is to, even when there are oppositions, and this is another thing, fear is played upon sometimes by governments to help to control the population. Now, some people might say that's a good thing. And some people may say it's horrible. Well, I try to hold each perspective sacredly. So when people come to me, no matter where they're coming from, they can trust that I'm not going to shame or blame them for whatever decisions they make. But what I wish to bring into their lives is a better way to make decisions that are not based on fear, but are based on love and an understanding of deep, deep, deep truths about our lives together. And
Yes.
when I say deep truths, nobody has a cornerstone on truth. However, we all know when we do something wrong. We do. We just do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We know if we harm someone, that's not right. We just know it somewhere inside of us. In many religions, it's written in documents or stones or in sacred texts or biblical texts. But it is almost as if our connection with Source shows itself by our own understanding of what is right and wrong if we just took the time to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So those are some of the things that I work with people to help to bring them to their greatest expression on this planet so that they're not powering over other people because they fear what's going on and they need to control something, but to power with something. Like in the book that I wrote about extraordinary leadership, what does that mean? Well, it was very hard to break it up into keys, but these are keys that are broad that help people to understand. The first one is about power. The thing that I said a moment ago of consciously choosing power with versus power over. The second is truth, seeking and speaking truth. How do we seek and speak our own truth? How many times do we find ourselves lying? And why do we lie? Well, sometimes we lie to protect someone. Is that the healthiest thing to do? We need to ask all these questions so that if we start to lie too much, then we're no longer our authentic selves. And so
we're on
when
the wrong path.
Right.
It's like making too many turns, and you're just not on your own path. Mm-hmm.
And leaders right now, unfortunately, I mean, the traditional leaders, we're all leaders of our own lives, and that I emphasize very strongly in my book, is that those who are leveraged leaders out into the public are taught to lie over and over and over again. And they're incentivized to do so. Mm-hmm. And it really is contributing to destroying the very foundation that could be a support for our going forward and our moving through some of the big issues that we're experiencing in our lives. So my speaking to people one-on-one or in their families or in their organizations, I try to evoke, how can you be a better leader of your family, of your life, so that you could be a better leader if you were ever to become president, or if you were ever to be in a position to run a country? What would that be like? If you could do it in your own life, it's the first step to being able to do it in just an extraordinary way for our country or people in other countries.
Do you think that people have the same sense about believing lies as they do telling lies? Do you think we are as aware in our hearts when we believe a lie? Like someone else gives us a suggestion which is incorrect, to control. What do you think about that?
I think when people are in fear, they want to believe that the people who are running a country or running their families or running their communities, they can trust.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where the rub comes in. So here you have leaders who are people too.
Yeah. That's one thing we need to realize. I know the leaders are demonized. I mean, with the polarity that we have in politics, each side, we've removed the humanity in other people as we look at them.
Yes. So if you imagine any time that you might have told a lie, a little white lie, and then it built and built and built because you've gotten so far deep into it that you can't retract it. And we all do this. Every one of us does it. People could say they don't lie, but if they tracked during the day when they've told little white lies, on average, it's like 3 to 10 times a day, sometimes more.
Mm.
And this is because we've been trained to not hurt people, by for whatever reason, but actually by telling lies like that, we end up hurting ourselves. We end
And
up powering over ourselves because we don't want to hurt someone's feeling or put someone in an awkward position. But then we put ourselves in an awkward position because it's hard to retract a lie because then people don't trust you. And then it takes longer to build trust again,
yeah. Well, and I think that there are lies, many different little lies that people tell to protect themselves because they don't believe that they are worthy to be who they really are. And so authenticity is just like some kind of ephemeral, impossible state that people don't really know, that we're all like just in this, not all, but you know what I mean? Like just in this fortress of lies, intending to protect the true self. But in fact, it just takes us down the wrong path, and it makes our relationships and experiences in our life completely misaligned with our truth.
Yes, and then we start to feel disenfranchised from
Yes.
who we are, and then people who are in that space begin to feel depressed. They begin to drink or take drugs to numb themselves because they feel like they can't fully be themselves. And the pathway. And
Mhm.
so to back off from that and I call it a life uh, joyful interrupt,
Hmm.
where I'll say to my clients, I want you to be fully yourself for one day, telling the total honest truth, not giving away your power, being authentic to what feels good for you. Just try it for a day and see what happens.
I'm
And
sure some people have no idea how is that even accomplished?
right, and then they might ask me. They might ask me, and I'll give them some
Who's
examples.
me? Who's the authentic me? I don't even know who that is.
That's right. That's right. And that's part of the work that I do, is helping
Mhm.
people to find their authentic and amazing. I mean, every human being I have worked with, from the most nefarious, and I've worked with people who have had many challenges. I'll just say this without breaking any confidences.
Sure.
Working from prison systems, to family therapy systems, to politics, to many other arenas, and including secret soldiers and the everyday you and me.
Mm.
The everyday you and me, everybody is amazing. They have amazing stories and they have amazing gifts. And they've made what I would call misdirections along the way, because that's what our society has grown to encourage instead
Yeah.
of being their authentic self.
With the work that you're doing with these leaders and and just, people in these different arenas. I mean, I'm so glad to hear that we hear, listening to this podcast and on this podcast, we are a spiritual community with deep felt truths, experiences, like evidences in our lives that as you said, the unseen realms, the loving, benevolent character of the universe, unity, that all of this is the accurate true. It's the truth. It's the truth about the universe, however we interact with it or experience it. But I think we feel very disenfranchised. We feel very, as if people say woo woo to like diminish any of our experiences, but to have a spiritual paradigm that isn't protected by an old religious, probably patriarchal system, that, we can feel very hopeless. Like, how can these political leaders, how will we ever coalesce? Where are we going? Like, we're always going to be marginalized. So thank you for the work that you're doing. And can you tell us from your perspective how we can have hope? I love already you're telling us everyone's amazing with amazing stories, dealing with the same problem, trying to not lie anymore, to be authentic. Can you give us some hope? That's a tall order.
For sure. For sure. First, I want to say that miracles could happen at any moment.
Oh,
that's the first
amen.
thing I want to say.
Thank you. Yes.
And
I agree. I affirm.
And sometimes what happens in spiritual communities, and I've been a part of many spiritual communities, is what I call this spiritual override, like blinders on. I believe we live on a planet that is dual. Mm-hmm. We live on a planet that has gravity. So in the unseen realms, there's no time. There's no pain, or at least the kind that we experience. Right. You don't cut yourself and you're bleeding out. It's a different dimension. So it's a different perspective. So when you're speaking spiritually from that larger perspective, there has to be a bridge to our humanness. Mm-hmm. And what often happens is that bridge is just ignored completely. And that's why people say demeaning things like woo-woo and la la land and all that. This is where people could really gain some footing around, mm-hmm. What does spirituality mean? When something goes wrong or when something's happening in our world, if we're only in the vision of, oh, we can just envision that we're in a golden age, right? And we're going to be in a golden age. That's not how it works. Mm-hmm. It's just not how it works. How it works is that, oh, you see the vision, and then you contribute to bringing that vision about. Yes. That's where, when someone says walking our deepest talk, that's what it's about. So when we think of the vision of a golden age, which I do all the time, mm-hmm. I know it's actually here present, but it's covered up. It's almost as if it's been concretized, like, mm-hmm. Concreted. Right. Like our planet sometimes. So when you think of beautiful nature, when it's plowed down, it looks like it's no longer here. Mm-hmm. But underneath the asphalt, there are roots. There's mycelia communicating with each other from all over the world, all mm-hmm. over this planet, communicating one to another from thousands of miles away. So we too need to remember that it's been buried. The golden age has been buried.
Mm.
And both we need to uncover it and co-create it. Help to
So,
co-create it.
right. So what I'm hearing, and it's actually convicting in a positive way. It's encouraging, is that, I mean, what we know about the universal laws, if I'm feeling marginalized and disenfranchised, well, get in the system. You know what I mean? Like, get to work, walk that deepest talk. Because the state that I am experiencing is my free will choice. So then get in there and find the meeting place between you and the system, you and the other, you and fill in the blank that you are feeling disenfranchised or marginalized by.
So I'll give you an example of a couple of things. And I want to say that not everyone wants to go out and be an activist or join
Whatever the way that you do it, exactly. Not everyone has the same role, of course. Yes. Mm-hmm.
That's right. And also, I ask people to think about it like this. Are there people that you might have unintentionally marginalized?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
And I ask, when you wake up in the morning, are you waking up with this thought of, I'm marginalized and I feel like crap and I don't know what to do? If you're waking up like that, then it means that your attention is on that.
Mm-hmm.
And all the work I've ever done in my whole life, if your intention is not put out there in the way in which you'd like it to look, then you are going to draw exactly what you're focused on. It's going to draw to you, and you're going to experience it more and more. Just like earlier when we were talking about synchronicities, well, we were thinking about the same thing.
Yeah,
and that's
exactly.
when they start to come together, and what I call the red carpet starts to roll out when that happens, you know? And it's not always that way, but when we start to wake up in the morning and start off with, instead of going right to your cell phone,
Yeah,
your
that
cell
guy.
phone, or right to all your technology. Technology is great,
Mm-hmm.
but in perspective again. But you wake up and you ask yourself, what am I grateful for in my life?
Mm-hmm.
You just ask that question.
Yes.
And how would I like this day to be different than yesterday?
Yes.
Just starting out with those questions and sitting with it for even 5 minutes.
Yes. Yes, get ahead of the tidal, right? Get ahead of the
Yes.
tidal wave. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. But also by gratitude and this inquiry of, you're actually asking your higher self, what can I do
Mm-hmm.
to bring me closer to what I'd like in this life?
Mm-hmm.
That's what you're
Yes.
asking for by doing that. And trust me, if your beautiful audience took in your calendar or journals, some, men, women, some don't like to do journaling at all, but if you just jot one word in your calendar about, this is a day that I gave gratitude, just put a G on your calendar, and at the end of the day, write what your general day was like, and you did this for 3 months, where the G's were, I guarantee will be much better days than where it wasn't.
Yes.
So where you just invite, you're asking these questions. The other thing is, you spoke before about making choices or being in this world where people get diminished.
Yes.
or practices get diminished. I encourage people all the time to be in discernment about, okay, what do I take into my body?
Yes.
What do I eat? What do I consume? What do I consume on the television or on
Yes.
YouTube or on news feeds? What am I consuming? Is it healthy for me? How could I be in discernment around that? How do you be in discernment of someone who's lying to you? If you're taking it all in, like you're in fear and you're just going to listen to the next
Talking head
leader, whatever,
Yeah.
and you don't do any vetting yourself about what they're saying, that's a formula for disaster, because you're giving your power away to make an informed choice, no matter what it is, no matter what you choose. I encourage people to learn how to be constructively discerning about their choices. And this includes people you invite into your life.
Yes.
Who's in my inner circle? Are they healthy for me? Do we have healthy dialogues? Are they pummeling me with information without listening to who I am?
Are they gossiping and speaking, poorly about other people, whether they're people that or just, yeah. I mean, sometimes complaining about, let's just say, politics or something, that's just gossip. It's good old-fashioned gossip.
You're absolutely right.
But it is put under the guise that it came from the news, which the news isn't the news anymore. Maybe when we were kids or when our parents were kids. But the news is gossip.
Yes.
And it's just, I mean, truly, in a way, mean-spirited, or at least just void of spirit.
Yeah. And because I do so much research in this arena of the propagandizing of ideas,
yes,
is so entrenched right now that people are having a tough time to know what the truth is anymore. And that's why it's so important to get your news from several different news sources, or to get it firsthand, which is what I've been trying to do.
News, and possibly ones that are public, that would be rather than commercial.
Yes.
And propaganda, it's so interesting. I just was having this download 2 days ago, I think, with Spirit. Propaganda, it's defined, I'm paraphrasing loosely, it is that to either intentionally mislead or to just sort of imply something else, So it really comes down to logical fallacies, like kind of just, brushing over the whole story. And so just like some of the things that are positive, activistic, to make good positive changes, that there's a little bit of diminishing of the whole story, because we need to move it forward. And if it's that if it's your side, if it's your view, you think that's okay. Once again, like sacrificing something for the truth, sacrificing the whole truth for the greater good. But in fact, we need to work together with the whole story.
Yes.
It's so hard to get the whole story, though, isn't it? It takes some discipline, really, honestly, doesn't it?
It definitely does. And sometimes it's so exhausting for people.
Yeah.
If I've heard anything repeated to me with my clients that I work with, it's that they're exhausted from trying to distill the truth. And at that point, I say to them, that's your body's mechanism saying to you, it's time to let go a little of it.
Take a break. Yeah.
Take a break.
It doesn't all have to be sorted out in one day or 1 month, whatever. Right.
That's right. And listen to your own inner voice and your connection. So spending more time in meditation, which is something that has been astronomically important in my life,
Sure.
and my capacity to be able to listen to the divine and others on the other side, and to help inform our world now, is such a gift. And an example is, before I came on this call with you, I was reflecting on you, and I always ask permission
Of
from
course.
your higher self
Mm-hmm.
and your soul's space. And this is what came through, just in a brief summary. Now it is time to step out of the shadows, to become a beacon for others. Don't allow anyone or anything to dim your light.
Mm. Wow, thank you so much. Oh, I feel that deeply. And by the way, I felt you tapping in. It was probably 40 minutes before we got on, right? Yep.
Yeah.
I felt it. I started thinking about you. I felt your energy and I was like, oh, this is going to be so peaceful and easy to be with Joyce and in this conversation. And isn't it not? I mean, I'm
It
asking the listener. It's very, and I was like, oh, good. That's that. I'm so glad. So I felt you tapping into my energy. I welcomed it and I was able to experience you as well. But I want to give you validation for that message. It is so, I have been doing deep work with myself, I would say the last few months, but certainly the last couple of days. And it said, now is the time, is how it started. And so I'm getting chills. When I was coming to my studio this morning, I passed by a person on the sidewalk who was, clearly an unhoused person. He was pushing a cart and he was talking to himself. And so, of course, we see that as mental illness and delusion. But what I know about people who are experiencing, yes, mental, they're not going to deny the science behind it, but I know that they are actually tapping into the collective disillusion. And so they are actually picking up that field of distortion. And
Yes.
so as I crossed paths with him, he said, not to me, to the field of distortion. He said, why do you think there's not enough time? And I was like, oh, thank you. And then we're passing by each other. He's behind me. And I was listening to see if there's anything else. And I just heard again, he's even more animated, like, why do you think there's not enough time? And I was like, wow. And I was like coming up to my office and I was just kind of saying thank you. And I heard, Spirit, my guide, say, it's not just for you. And he had just, before he passed by me, he passed by the tip of my building where the receptionist sits. And I came in and, and I said to her, hey, listen, can I ask you a question? It's unusual, but I'm unusual, right? And she's like, yeah, of course. And I said, do you have this kind of sense all the time that there's not enough time? She goes, always, constantly. It's driving me crazy. I'm exhausted from it. And I said, okay. And I told her the story. And she's like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. So just there's a question for her. Why do you think there's not enough time? So your message from my higher self, now is the time.
Yes.
Unplug from that distortion that there's not enough time or something about time. Actually, I had another podcast this morning and and we were talking about time, having time to meditate. And I said, we should start saying that time has us when we have that, when we have that belief that there's not enough time. Time has too much of us is the thing that we're letting happen. Oh, that's so beautiful. I can't wait I'm writing down the time of this because I can't wait to go back and I'm going to write that down. Thank you so much, Joyce. How beautiful.
You're welcome. And I really believe that this thing about time, and I'm so glad you said that little story, that it is a distortion, and we're distorting so much about our lives. So another distortion is, I'm not doing enough. I'm not doing enough to make a difference. I'm not doing enough to counterbalance what is going out in our world. No, instead of this negative overlay onto ourselves, which we do a lot, like saying we're not enough, to say what have I done in my life? What are the things that I've done in my life that make me feel really good that I've
Mm.
contributed?
Mm-hmm.
And what would I like to do more of? Or what other things does my spirit wish me to do so that I could make this a better place to live and be?
Mm-hmm. Mm. Yes, be the change you want to see in the world. I love to paraphrase this. It's just such deep wisdom, but yes, be the action, be the deeds
Yeah.
that you want the world to be, the world you want to live in.
And what does that mean concretely? Like it could be really big things, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it could also be little things.
Could be
Like
kindnesses that complimenting someone
that's
on
right.
their smile or something. I don't know.
That's right. Or even deeply listening to
Oh
someone.
yes. Mm-hmm.
Now, you know, I have many times thought about how to help people who don't have homes.
Mm-hmm.
My brother at one point was homeless,
Mm-hmm.
and he and I have had lengthy discussions, and he's a brilliant man.
Yeah.
He's very well educated, and he found himself without a home.
Mm-hmm.
And there were parts of that experience that he chose, he said, and there were parts of it that he wished he wasn't, but he said it taught him so much about judgment, about people's judgment, about your very example. Oh my goodness, I love that. Like, what if some of the people who find themselves without a home are there to carry energy, hold, that whole expression of holding space for,
Yeah.
holding the energetic of a very much larger perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps those people holding that energetic might actually be contributing to less violence or less something else, right?
Mm-hmm.
We never know why our souls exactly are brought to a certain place, but we have an opportunity to be conscious of where would we like to be? Do we want to be in that place? Why do we want to be in that place? I know actors who have chosen to be homeless because they were sick of the paparazzi.
Oh my goodness.
I just want you to know that. So you see how we get ourselves really distorted about how things happen and why. So I've talked to people who have been homeless who were so sick of working a 9-to-5 job and felt like they were being controlled and felt like their whole life was diminished by not being able to uniquely express themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And it was somehow their way or their way with the divine to regroup.
To just clock out of the whole system,
Yeah.
and to take back, in a way, to take back their power. I can understand that. Which, by the way, of course, none of this means that we should just go, oh, they choose to be there, blah blah blah. I know you don't mean that, but
Absolutely. Yes.
I want to just make
Yes.
sure we acknowledge that in case someone was partially listening.
Yeah. And there are people who are homeless who are, I wish our system were designed to allow them to come out of that
Oh yeah.
space. We're moving in the opposite direction. So the more that we could encourage, your audience, if you know of someone who is without a home, ask them what they imagine they would like to contribute.
Mm-hmm.
What do they need? What do they truly need?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not always just about food and a roof over your head, although that would be a really great help. Or to feed their children,
Mm-hmm.
And we actually have plenty of resources in the whole of our world to take care of all of that, but at many levels, we're choosing not to.
Yes.
Why? So we need to ask ourselves, when does it become enabling, or when is it truly helpful? I know that when I had to have surgery, I couldn't do work. I needed support. I was encouraged to ask for support. Some people have a really tough time asking for support, no matter rich or poor or anywhere in between.
Feels vulnerable, and vulnerability, where we think vulnerability is a dangerous, unsafe state, but it's actually so beautiful. And I have a friend who is having some health issues right now, and having, she needs to ask her family for support, who are there. They want to, they're desperate to support her, but she still has this difficulty with it. And so I'm reminding her, only you can tell them how to love you, and they really, really want to love you. They really want to know how to love you, and only you can really be the voice of that. And we're just conditioned to the contrary of that.
Another piece of this related to that is, when you're genuinely giving from yourself, people who have a tough time receiving, I say to them, I want you to remind yourself how beautiful you feel when you're able to help someone.
Yes.
And
it's such a gift to the other person if you allow them to help you.
That's right. Exactly. And that is what I experienced when I received so much help when I went through this unexpected surgery. It was overwhelming, but it was beautiful all at once, because I do give a lot. Most people in the spiritual arenas do give a lot. Sometimes they do give too much, and this is where our edge comes in, where this balance. So one of the vital keys in my book that I talked about is about dynamically balancing. What do we do in our lives? What do we bring in? And to invite. Another key is about miracles, allowing for miracles to come, and not to pass them over.
Yeah.
And there are amazing miracles, like, this is just one example, but this is a very cool example. A very good friend of mine was trying to figure out if she should allow this to be a time where she retreats and she doesn't take action on a new path she was going to take. And she was in a lot of consternation about it. So she took a walk, and she looked down and she saw hundreds of thousands of ants all at once.
Oh, wow.
Now, symbolically, she didn't know this, but symbolically, ants mean be industrious. It's time to be industrious.
Collaborate.
Yeah, collaborate. It's time not to retreat. It's time to. Now, what a gift and miracle was that? This little tiny thing of 1,000 ants in front of her. So I encourage people to take a day to invite miracles in the morning and see what happens. And maybe even do it for a week. And start to understand that it might not come in a big package, it might come in little packages that might lead to a big package.
That's beautiful. I love how you said it earlier, allow miracles, because I think sometimes we think, I need to be rescued, and so I demand a miracle. When things are not manifesting for us, that's also for us. It's not, things that are happening for us, and things that are not happening for us. Maybe it is so that we can see where the miracles already are. We can summon our own strength. We can, see the ants that are encouraging us to not to retreat, but to move forward and build and collaborate and create. But allowing miracles just means that I will say yes to them now. I will let the door be open to them, and I will make sure that I receive them, because we need this. We need the worthiness. We need the divine worthiness to even notice miracles, right?
Absolutely. I love that you're saying this, that when we humbly ask and then also feel like we deserve, it sounds like a contradiction, but it is absolutely not. They're one and all together. They're this and this can be held together. And this also reminds me, kind of in an arc of all this beautiful dialogue we're having, is that when we believe that we are worthy, and when we believe also that we are no better or worse than anyone else, then miracles start to come in.
Yes.
Including those who are homeless, including those who have all the wealth in the world, but who are depressed as could be because they feel lonely.
Yeah.
We all experience problems as human beings. And when we can make that connection with the divine and to ask for help, be willing to gift others when our cups are full, and to receive, it's just amazing what can happen. And also to rather than finding ourselves complaining when things are going crazy, not like when we find ourselves, I'll give you an example of one of my clients who had a family business, and the family was about to transfer it to their son, and COVID happened. And it made the economics of that impossible. They felt, after time, that with discernment, they decided that they were going to sell their business. And part of them was fearful about that. So we worked through that. And then when they made the decision, it was very important that they grieve.
Sure.
They allow themselves to grieve, because it was a vision and a beautiful company that they had created, but also to be able to not regret the decision that they were making, because otherwise they'd be spending all of their time and energy when what in fact they were trying to do was provide some relief. So after they made that decision, they started to experience time, having time, having more time, having time to see their grandchildren grow, having time to spend to catch up on, who are you anyway? My daughter, my son, my employees, my friends, my family. And it was enriching in another way. It's like sometimes when you let go of something you're holding on to really tightly, the letting go allows doors to be open, and a new opportunity came through to them, which is now thriving. So you see how these things can happen. But if you're holding on so tight and you're just focused on fear and you're focused on loss all the time, and you feel like God has betrayed you or the universe has betrayed you in some way, then there's no room to allow for the beautiful things that can become, that we are becoming.
As you were telling the story, I heard, When you stop believing there's not enough time, you can have more being. That's yes, I need to, if I'm not a tattoo person, but that's one that I could get right there, right?
Oh, there's a wonderful doctor that I work with who is part of my the university I'm affiliated with,
Mm-hmm.
and Dr. Amit Goswami, and he calls it doobie doobie doo.
Goswami, I know, yes, I've read like a few of his books.
Yeah,
He's
he's terrific.
awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, wonderful, a wonderful human being.
Oh, please pass along my regards and appreciation for his work. It's really wonderful work. That's
Well,
really amazing.
unfortunately, I haven't been able to see him in person in a really long
Okay.
time, but
Yeah, whenever.
yes, hopefully sometime. Of course I will.
Uh-huh.
Of course I will.
Well, I would love to for you to tell everyone about your book, why they should read it, and what the outcome is that is going to help them to allow miracles and more hope and blessing in their lives.
Although I wrote the book several years ago now, it is still very, very current, because what it does with each chapter is give exercises and practical suggestions about what you can do in your own life to find your power again, to help you to remove yourself from unhealthy relationships, including work relationships, while you transition to other work environments, helping to support yourself. It helps you to learn how to tell the truth in ways that encourage your authenticity to come out more greatly and to attract authenticity in others. It also helps the notion of integrity, walking your deepest talk, where people will begin to look up to you. And if they don't already, because there are many people who have already been on a journey around this, but these are fine-tuning and honing these skills for you with yourself and your family and your workplace. And also to help to encourage risk-taking, healthy risk-taking with courageous acts, and including acts of kindness. So dynamically balancing what you do from the personal to the global, also with all of those topics from the personal to the global. Any kind of problem you have, there are suggestions in this book that will lead you to a different way of being. I have a whole bunch of stories in this book. Some are personal, but most are not. Most are from my clients and from cultures that I've had the opportunity to interact with, and leaders that I interacted with who described their journey or described situations in which there were challenges. So, like on a big scale, if we were to talk about how can we affect change, how can we transform things on a large scale, several years ago, I worked for a company called the Foundation for Global Humanity. And I tell several stories about our engagement with other cultures. Our mission was to record, document, and preserve indigenous and contemporary ways of healing, knowing, and leading in the world. And it's like a snapshot into other cultures so that we can integrate them into our own ways of being. So we were invited by the Mamos of Colombia, and simultaneously they told us that in meditation, several different tribal leaders, I'm going to call them leaders, they call them the Mamos. They're the guides of the tribe. So they have a different term because for them, leading, the word leading has been identified with powering over.
Mm.
And I'm hoping that that will be shifted. That's why I call it transformational leadership, because I don't believe in powering over. I believe that we can come together and power with, bring all our unique gifts together to help to affect change. So they received these messages from Spirit to come together and to invite many people throughout the planet to come to help to address issues in our world. This was pre-COVID, but many similar issues were being discussed. The economy, the environment, the homeless, the what we're doing to each other and our lands.
Mm-hmm.
What does it mean to bring in new technologies? And are we looking at 7 generations into the future? All of these kind of questions. So they asked us to come. And as a small group of 4 people, when we arrived, they did what is called a registering of us, where they were allowed to look into us intuitively to see if we were prepared to accept and receive the teachings we were about to receive. And if we were willing to look at what we have done in our lives, both positive and negative, and be the authentic self that they needed us to be in order to be a part of this group. So this is what they were asking in silence for several hours in 100-degree weather. Very seriously, all these beautifully robed, all in the same type of linen white robes, in a semicircle around us, several of them and 4 of us, with very serious faces. And at the end, when they knew what the answer was, they started jabbing each other with their elbows and laughing hysterically and saying, yes, you are welcome to come.
Oh.
And when we understood later what all of this meant, it was such a profound experience to be able to be witnessed to allowing for our authentic selves to show to them so that they could determine that we were ready to receive things.
That's beautiful. So beautiful.
And the second part of this story, which is even more beautiful, so I invite people to prepare themselves in that way, to be their authentic selves. But the second half is even more amazing. So here is the leader, I would say the equivalent of a president of a country and a community. When they were doing all the activities that they were doing, they invited all the different tribes who came and all the different people to present things to the rest of the group for learning. After the second or third day, this Mamos, the head leader of this tribal council, got up and said, I want to apologize, through a translator, I want to apologize for all of you for thinking that we were inviting people who were not conscious and that we were going to have to teach them consciousness. How do you become more conscious? No, this is not that at all. And I am so sorry that we had that prejudice towards you. We want you all to know that we witness your consciousness and that we have come together equally to share this with the world. This is what I believe could happen with leaders all over our world. I do practices where I speak to the spirit guides and ask them, with permission of the leaders' souls, to bring dreams to the leaders to help them make healthier decisions and healthier choices, so that we're not harmed as a people and our world is not harmed.
That is a wonderful prayer. That is a wonderful request, because it couldn't be more gentle. the most gentle request we ask for, obviously, the permission of the soul, of the higher self, but then you just ask them to send a dream that will soften the heart. That's amazing. I am going to engage in that as a practice to help this world. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Can you tell us the name of your book?
Yes.
I have some show notes, of course, with the link to it. But
Extraordinary Leadership During Extraordinary Times. And I want you to see the cover. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm
I love
backward
it.
here.
Oh, beautiful Earth. Beautiful Mama Earth.
It's Earth with a superimposed flower of life sacred geometry and a golden heart running around it. Mm-hmm. Because I believe that only with love are we going to move through these very challenging circumstances that sometimes we find ourselves in, both personally and globally.
Amen. I am with you. That is the way. That is the way, the truth, and the life. As Jesus said. Jesus said, actually, that I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one gets to the Father except through I am. It's the God I am. As God said in the Old Testament, his name is I am, that I am. It's your I am, my I am. It is the I am. Yes. That is the way, the truth, and the life. And no one gets to God, no one gets to unity, to the truth, except for through I am.
And that is beautiful. And I want to add one more thing to that, which is there are some people who believe that they are God, like that whole description in scripture, sometimes gets misinterpreted, because in our human bodies, it is very challenging to become all that is, to have God expressed in our human vessels. That's why we represent God through us. Mm-hmm. And if we tried to contain all that is, we'd probably explode.
We'd be all that is.
It would be too much to take in.
We'd have to spread out into all that is.
That's right. And we're both very tiny people.
Yeah. Yes, we're a fractal of God.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Well, Joyce, this has been just soul warming. That's the sensation I can think of. And I just I just want to appreciate and tell you how grateful I am for your life, your example, for your path. And I feel like I have 1,000 more questions for you, and maybe you need to come on again, because I want to hear about the NDEs too.
Oh, I'd be happy to. And I do want to offer for your audience
thank you.
For you 50% off of my services, especially if you're a first-time client for my individual session.
Oh, thank you. How generous. Thank you so much.
So
all you need to do is, we have the link in the show notes, is in booking, mention that you heard this podcast episode with, just Charmed Life, with Charmed Life, Tricia Carr, whatever. Joyce will be able to track it down. Okay. That's so incredibly generous. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Well, I'm so grateful that you came on, and I just send all of my prayers and vision to the work that you're doing, continuing to expand. So thank you so much for coming on the show. Genuinely, so much heart for everything that you're doing.
And thank you for all the work you're doing. And I can't agree with Spirit more. Don't allow anyone or anything to dim your light.
Noted. Thank you.
And that's for your audience too.
Absolutely. Yes.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I feel honored. The work that you do is just beautiful, and I just really appreciate you.
Thank you. I appreciate you. Well, just in case you missed it, Joyce is offering half off a one-on-one session, an intuitive reading session. I think you need to take her up on that. So definitely the link to that and how to connect with Joyce is in they are in the show notes. Everything is in the show notes. And I'll just say it out loud. And again, her name is Joyce Anastasia, and that is spelled with a CIA at the end. Her website is ledbywisdom.com. And she says you can also just email her directly, joyceanastasia@gmail.com. We also have links to her social media. I'm just so excited that this is happening in the different areas that it really needs to happen. We do have a new paradigm, a positive golden age that we are actually in, and our hearts are there, and it needs to be expanded from the heart. And so, wow, I'm just so excited. I'm also excited to read her book, link in the description for that. So, I just want to encourage you, as she said, the message she received from me, to keep shining your light, to spend more time in your own light. If you have a meditation practice, if we can somehow add more of it, that's a note to self as well. And to, by the way, I'm feeling guided. I'm feeling a little nudge from spirit that if you have never been able to start a meditation practice, we talk about it a lot on this podcast, my guests, and I teach about it. Know that it is absolutely normal, typical for that to be challenging to start because of all of the ways that we are conditioned to be outside of our own energy, and just beginning even incrementally. In fact, incremental habit shifting and building is a sustainable way. So 5 minutes, as actually was said in the episode previously with Michelle Vazel, 5 minutes a day is how she started. And, that, or if you have a meditation practice, if somehow you're feeling like I have a meditation practice, but things are not shifting and changing, that's a time to shift it up. That maybe the mind, maybe the body has gotten a little bit too acclimated to our habits. So for example, if you have a meditation practice and you are just self-guided, no guide track, and you do, 15, 20 minutes in the morning, I think the time is still, morning time is really great. We need to set get ahead of the tide, as we said in this episode. But maybe you can do some kind of guidance track. Maybe that can be music or tones, or it can even be something like just water. Or I've heard Esther Hicks say that she puts on an audio track of air conditioner, just like just a white noise track, or some kind of singing bowls. That might be something. Or, of course, to actually do a guided track with a meditation guide. And I have a lot. So if you need any, reach out. And there's some on my YouTube channel. And I think there's some on this actual podcast. I don't put as many on the podcast because I know people listen to podcasts while they're driving. And I don't want anybody to get induced into meditation and not be paying attention. You should be handling heavy machinery while you meditate. That's true. So anyway, there's a little tip there that you just might need to shift it up a little bit, or maybe also add another meditation after work, before bed, something along the ways, or the micro meditations throughout the day, stopping and coming present and breathing. That is something that I have to remind myself of. And so I pass that along to you with love and appreciation. And so there you go. That's this episode. All my love and appreciation to you. Thank you for shining your light on our beautiful world. And thanks for tuning in. I love you, whoever you are.